Obviously, you guys have you've talked a lot about how much depth you have on this team, and that's shown in your ability to kind of work through these injuries and have players just next man up type thing. But I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that seems kind of unique within MLS, just the challenges of creating a deep team with all obviously salary cap, all other things you have to take into consideration in doing so.
Yeah, I mean it's certainly not easy. There's different ways to do it. Some teams spend a little bit more on their first 11. Some teams spread it out a little bit more over the total roster. I think we've been a team that has spent a good amount of money in a few players, but then also saved a little bit to spread out. So I feel like our depth is maybe better than some of the others. Perhaps you could argue that our top end isn't what some of the others are, but I think overall, following that formula has meant that hopefully in a situation like we're in right now, where we essentially have to go 3 deep in our positional depth chart in the holding mid position, that we still won't miss a beat. If you're looking at a guy like Jack Jewsbury, he has frankly more experience than a Ben Zemanski, obviously a little bit older, but you saw last night he stepped right in and I didn't see a difference. So it's nice to know we have that. Obviously we drafted a Nick Beasler. That was a position we felt we had depth, but I also felt it's a key position. You get injuries in that position. It's why, I thought you can never have too many there. Newell would be out. No Jack, is obviously reaching the twilight here in the last, 2-3 years of his career. So you're always preparing for, the next game, but you're preparing for the next year and the next 5 years as well. So you really gotta look ahead always. I think the best coaches do. They prepare for now, but they look for the future. So I think we're in a position, even George Fashive, who's really done well, where we shouldn't miss too much of a beat. Obviously we miss Will, and then now with Ben, we'll miss Ben. But we've got very good options, and I'm not concerned at all having to plug in, Jack Jewsbury. And perhaps we'll see how these young guys do on Wednesday. We're going to play both of them, 60 minutes or more on Wednesday, George and Nick. So we'll see how they do.
Have you spoken with Ben?
Yeah. I called him. Actually, called him before the scan, and then talked to him after as well.
Okay.
So.
How did you say that?
He wanted to do surgery today. He's ready to go. So I think for me that says everything about his mentality of you can't do anything about the past and dwell on that. He's the type of guy, and you see in the way he plays, similar to Will, where he'll be back as quick as you can possibly get back. I'm sure he'll set, as I told him last night, I'm sure he'll set records for ACL return.
Is he getting surgery today, or do you know when that's happening?
No, I don't think he is today. They're going to evaluate him a little bit. They got to see if, I'm not a doctor, but sometimes if there's too much swelling, they need to wait. But we're going to get it as soon as possible.
You mentioned Beasler and George playing tomorrow or Wednesday's game. Do you see it a little bit with the situation where you're at as a test for those guys and seeing if one of them should be in the 18 or? Yeah,
because obviously now if, let's say, Jack starts, then now you've got one of them most likely who's on the bench to give us cover in there. So I think it's great, and it's what we've tried to create. I enjoyed today because we had some T2 guys that we brought up to fill our numbers. Some guys that have done well with that group. It's only been a week and a half, but it allows us to kind of see where those guys stack up. Allows Jay to see where they stack up. It also, for me, it allows us to see where they stack up in comparison to other guys that may be on the bottom end of our roster, guys that perhaps we're going to think about loaning out. But ideally, if we're doing our job right in a day like today, guys like Maxi Urruti and Darren Esprilla, who and the Mikey Nanchoffs and the Paparatos, those guys should stand out, which they did. And those are the guys that are closest to the first team. And if we're doing our job right, the guys that are with T2 should stand out as well, but maybe not for the right reasons. Maybe they'll stand out because they still need some time. But also you'll find some interesting things out when you do these type of training sessions. You might see that some of these T2 guys are a little further along than you think. You might see some of the guys that are with us maybe, need to go down and get a game or two down there. So I think it's great to have that flexibility and that freedom, and we're building a proper squad in that regard.
Obviously, as you mentioned, you have a lot of depth, but as a coach, you spend all this time building your team. You have the starting lineup. You have something.
Yeah.
You want things to work, and you see 3 major injuries happen from last season. Now, is that tough?
Yeah, but I've been in this business a long time, and I've seen it all. I've been around, and I've had a lot of injuries happen, and I really don't dwell. You guys know me. I don't dwell too much on that because you can't. You got to move on quickly, and you don't expect or worry every day that you're going to lose guys. But when it happens, it's a quick. It's a quick. You're not happy, right? But then you move on, and it's the same thing with anything that happens. There's a lot of little things that pop up every single day for me as a manager. And if I was always getting too bent out of shape with all the little things that pop up that tick me off, then I would never have even enough keel to manage this job. So I think you learn over time. You got to dominate your emotions, and you got to expect things are going to happen, and then you move on from them, and you manage them, you handle them, and if you've built your team the right way, you can manage them.
When you were a player, obviously you suffered some injuries of your own. Does that give you a different perspective maybe than some others who've maybe not been through that when it comes to managing a player coming back?
I think maybe a little bit. I think it's more I can relate to them, and they know that that they can relate to me a little bit. And when a guy like Will or Valeri or some of these guys, when I talk to them through the rehab, I can just share a story or two about my injuries, and so I think it happens. It's as much as Ben going down an injury was this big thing as far as the media is concerned, it's really not an abnormal thing. You see it everywhere around the league. Guys get injured, and we've had a couple injuries, but you move on from it. That's all you can do.
You, based on the timeline we talked about a few weeks ago, is Will still around like 2 to 4 weeks from rejoining training? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what they keep saying is, 3 to 4 games into the season. I don't know if that's exactly going to be true. Maybe it's 5, 6. Maybe it's, I don't know. Depends on the final stage of his fitness and his sharpness, playing wise, and his mental side. Because when he goes in, he's got to be ready to go in. Play 90 minutes. He's got to be ready to go in and tackle, and he's got to be sharp, soccer-wise. So we'll probably have a better sense once he gets into training of just how close he is, and we'll see. Maybe we throw him in a T2 game and build him up there a little bit. You don't want to do that a ton with senior players, but we did that with Rodney. It worked, and so we might in the final stages of getting him in with us and playing 90 minutes. We might give him a 45 and a 60 run, couple games, and that way he can test it out. And feel it out, and we can make a decision on just how close he is.
We didn't see him out there today. Is that a good thing, bad thing, or are we just overanalyzing?
No, he's with New York with the CBA, so with those discussions and everything. So, yeah. Same thing with Char. Char's fine. He took a knock. Obviously was limping, but it was a contusion. He was on the bike today, so we just protected him there.
Now, given the injury to Ben, potential changes in the formation you're running out, whether you change it or not, how does that change what you need to do in these last couple weeks of the preseason? What do you need to change that maybe you weren't going to do before?
Well, we'll probably look a little more closely on Wednesday. We're going to play a lot of young guys, but we'll play. We'll play Maxi. He's been playing really well, so we'll give him a good run, see how he looks. Spria, same thing, give him a good run. Papa, obviously keep him sharp. G. Anderson, but then the rest are going to be young guys. They're going to be some of our draft picks this year, some of our draft picks last year. We might even throw on the bench a couple T2 guys, maybe give them 30 minutes. So there'll be a lot of different things that we're looking to do with this Wednesday. We're recovering for the most part, the majority of the guys, so that we can have them ready for Saturday. We're looking at some guys that are really close to maybe being in with the first team, at the very least on the bench. And then we want to see where we're at with some of our developmental players, our youngsters, see where they're at. And with Ben, like I said, being out, we'll probably have a little closer eye on some things like a Nick Beasler and a Fashive, see how they do. Might even, there's another player that's going to be signed with T2 that's a pretty experienced player. Might give him a little bit of time. He's a holding midfielder as well. But, Jack, again, I want to go back to these. Jack looked very good. He looked very comfortable. We know we can do that, and guys know him. Guys like him. He's a good player. That's the safest option, no doubt about it. But you never know. Maybe a Beasler and Fashive do so well, but I don't see that happening. Not in the first couple games. That would be more of a risk. We'd probably look to change a formation if we're not going to play Jack, but I don't think we would do that either, based on me having some time to sleep on it, and because then now you're affecting more than one guy's role. You're affecting multiple guys' roles. But I will say that we still have a couple ideas on our final starting lineup for March 7th. So we might play with that game against Staubach with a few things, just to kind of cross our T's and dot our I's before we make our final decision on how we're going to go against Salt Lake.
Having had time to sleep on the game yesterday, was there anything that sort of stood out as a positive to you, despite the final result?
A lot. I mean, the first 45 minutes, we were clearly the better team. It was 7-1 in shots. They scored on the one chance they had. And then second half, I honestly just throw it away. You burn the tape. I mean, what do you do? It's a red card, and the game's over. So I think our guys did okay to try to manage it, but you could see at the end, or it's our first 90 minutes, it was even hard for us to even find that extra gear to push. And the reality is, do you want them to push, pop a hamstring, So it's one of those where you just try to get out of there, and I look at the first half, and that's what I'm going to focus on more than anything, and we were clearly the better team in terms of chances created and flow, and but like I said after the game, there's still some things that, I think we can get a little bit more in the attack. Even though we got 7 chances, can we get more? Can we create more? Can we actually score a goal? And then, defensively, even though we gave up one shot, I don't look at that as a problem. I look at that more as just that raises our awareness of that situation and the moments. But I thought overall the back line was really, really organized. Adam looked comfortable. Nat looked comfortable. The team as a whole looked really good, and I thought our control of the game in that first half was very good.